Welcome to Fostering Blooms, the podcast where we dig deep into gardening and all the ways it can enrich your home and life.
Together, we'll explore every aspect of gardening the organic way, keeping it simple, accessible, and fun.
Whether you're a seasoned gardener or just getting your hands in the dirt, we're here to share the tips and insights you need to grow something truly special. I'm Shanna Foster Boleen.
And I'm Caitlin Blum, and we're two friends on a mission to cultivate beauty, creativity, and connection through everything we grow.
This is Fostering Blooms.
Hello, friend. This is Shannon, and today I will be flying solo as I answer a question from one of our Instagram followers. I am so excited to talk about this topic because this question actually touches not just on one thing, but several things Caitlin and I have a lot of passion around and have been talking about for a while. Without further ado, let's get started. Our question is from Dee at the Fairy Door Project, and her question is about growing flowers for pressing. She said that she has a small budget and limited skills, but she hopes for a lot of flowers. And she wants to grow flowers that she can press and is wondering if she can grow these from seed. Originally, she was interested in Queen Anne's lace, some daisies, poppies, cosmos, and ferns. She was concerned her list was too long, and I let her know very quickly, in our world, this list isn't too long at all. And in fact, she should be careful because if she watches us for too long, her list is going to get even longer. But that's what she wants, a lot of flowers, and that's what we're here to talk about. Now, really, there are multiple questions within this one question, and that's part of what I love about it. One of them is, I have limited skills, I have a limited budget, how can I make this happen? So let's get started with first things first, which is, where are you going to plant the things that you want to press? And how are you going to do it? This is a topic that's really close to my heart because I've seen a lot of things that make it seem especially hard to get your garden started, whether it's flowers or vegetables. Thanks to so many people before us, we've learned that no-dig gardening is so easy and the way to go. That's what I'm going to recommend. The first step is site selection. We're going to divide these flowers into sun lovers and shade lovers. So you could identify a sunny spot and a shady spot, or if you don't have both, choose the one that works for you. I would choose an area that is 4 feet wide by 4 feet wide. If you don't have something that fits those dimensions, then you could do something that's 2 feet by 4 feet. Do what works for you, but make sure that this spot is free from large rocks, roots, and anything that would be a hindrance to you being able to tend to it. Now, all of those boxes you get to your house, you're going to start saving those. Or if you don't get shipments, you can go to a local furniture store or grocery store and snag some cardboard boxes from them. Take off any tape or labels, and you're going to begin to lay them in a double layer. Most importantly, you want to make sure that the cardboard is overlapping. And the reason for that is because we're going to put it right down on top of the grass. And if you have gaps in the cardboard, then grasses will grow up through it. This doesn't matter if it's in sun or shade. That's how you're going to start the process. Once you've covered your area, the next thing to keep it really simple is to go buy some raised bed soil, or you could get a mixture of topsoil, some manure, some compost, and you're going to pile it on the cardboard 4 to 6 inches high. You can calculate online how many bags of soil you will need to get to that height. I will tell you, in my experience, it's usually more than you think, and this will probably be the most costly part of your flower growing process because you're going to be buying or bringing in all of your soil. If possible, I do recommend supporting local composting companies. Here in the greater Knoxville area, we use Green Heron, and their product is amazing. They can deliver the compost directly to you, and you can start your raised bed immediately right into the quality compost that they're delivering. Another option I want to mention is what we talked about with Animal Trades in our episode about soil health. This is a combination of using free mulch that's been created from local utility companies when they cut down trees. Then you layer in things like dried and decayed leaves, compost that you've either made yourself, or you could bury food scraps into that pile of mulch and leaves and allow it to compost down naturally. And then either getting aged manure from a local farmer, or you could buy some inexpensive bagged manure as well. And that's basically one way to do it at practically no cost to you at all. It will take some time for this kind of system to break down and sort of meld together, if you will, to be able to plant into that. So I would give yourself several months if you choose to go that option, but it is by far the least expensive method that I've mentioned, and it will absolutely work. It will just take a little bit longer. Now, the other important piece of information you need to have when you're setting up this no dig bed is that you'll want to leave at least a 3-inch border around the edge of the cardboard. And the reason for that is because we don't want the grass to grow up onto the compost. If you bring the compost right to the edge of the cardboard, it's going to be able to easily grow onto that. I actually leave about a 6-inch border, but 3 inches would be the minimum. And I know we're trying to maximize space here. So you could make your bed a little bigger than 4x4 to account for that gap. Now, on to the next part, which is our flowers. Of course, this is very, very exciting part. And I've broken this into a couple different sections, which is the sun and the shade. I want to be clear, while we aren't flower pressing experts, we definitely understand how to grow these flowers and when they need to be sown and how you need to care for them. We'll give you some recommendations of some specific varieties that we think might look really beautiful depending on your taste. Well, let's start with the sun lovers. Now, poppies are obviously a really popular option for pressing because they have really thin petals and there's multiple colors that you can choose from. If I was pressing poppies, I would probably go with mother of pearl or Pandora. And the reason I like mother of pearl is because there's multiple colors that come in that packet. The shades are beautiful. And then Pandora has that rich, deep wine color. But you have options if you want to try something that's a little bigger, like a Flemish poppy. You could do California poppies. If you live in a warmer climate, you can start some of them in the fall, like the California poppies, if you live in zone 7B. Caitlin had some great luck with that this year. Many of them are already coming up much earlier than usual. Or you can do what we do, which is in January or February, take those seed packets, place them into a Ziploc bag with a desiccant, and put them in the freezer for a minimum of 3 weeks, up to 8 weeks. I move mine from the freezer for 3 weeks into the refrigerator, and then I take them outside. Or you can put the seeds into an ice cube tray. Just make sure you label them so someone doesn't accidentally use them in a drink. Then you can just put the ice cube out on the ground after it's been in the ice cube tray for about 4 weeks. If you don't use the ice cube method, you'll just sprinkle those seeds on top of the soil because they do need light to germinate, so you don't want to cover them. If you're thinking from front to back, the height of those would be good for the middle of the bed position. The next thing Dee mentioned was daisies, and absolutely they are a classic flower that you can get seeds for, or you can purchase, but I'm also going to throw out the idea of echinacea. And one of the reasons that I love echinacea is because unless it's a double, it has that classic simple shape of the daisy and you get a lot of color options. Whereas with the daisy, it's going to be white, which is great. But if you want to diversify a little bit, then echinacea has a wide variety of colors that you could choose from and different shapes. Right now, I'm growing an echinacea called Echinacea pallida. I will tell you it is not a beginner seed to start with because it needs a lot of stratification, meaning cold to warm to moist to cold to hot. but there are other Echinacea seeds that are much simpler to start and you can direct sow, or you could purchase one plant and it eventually will grow into more, give you seeds, and you could sow those in the fall after the plant has produced seed. So that's another one that I think you could add in there. And likes full sun would be a good middle of the border plant. Cosmos, I absolutely love cosmos, and you mentioned those as well. Apricotta is probably one of my favorite colors. It's this beautiful peachy, yellowy, almost violet sheen to it in the light. These plants do get very large at about 4 to 5 feet tall, and you don't need a lot of them. You'll definitely want to put them at the back of the border. So in the 4x4 space, they get about 2 feet wide. So I would think 2 to 3 would be the most that you would need. And you literally can take that seed, gently push it into the soil and cover it, and they will come up. They are very, very tough, hardy, easy to grow plants. And this is the perfect time of year in late April to begin planting those, as well as your Echinacea. And as soon as those seedlings start coming up, make sure you get a garden stake behind it. You can get a big wood stick from your yard or your neighbor's yard. You can buy a wooden stake at the garden center and just use some garden twine to tie that gently to the stake so it doesn't fall over. Speaking of back of border plants, you had mentioned a Queen Anne's lace in your message, but we discourage this in our Zone 7B because it can become pretty invasive. Instead, we would direct you towards the false Queen Anne's lace or the bishop flower, which is Ami majus and Ami visnaga. And we'll have this in the notes because I know that Latin is not anybody's first language. It has the same type of flower as Queen Anne's lace. One is a white color, one is a green. Again, a larger plant, back of the border, beautiful, perfect time of year. You can go ahead and sow those now, and you should be getting some later this summer to come up. All right, so moving towards the front of our border, I'm going to suggest some pansies. Even though the pansy season's coming to an end where we live because it's starting to get warmer, that means you can probably get them on sale. But the main thing that I love about pansies is that these little guys are tough and will come back in the fall. As long as you're keeping that bed watered, then they will show up for you in the fall. And I've had some that even come back the spring after that. So choose a few colors you like. Go ahead and clip those flowers now and press them, plant them, keep them watered, and you'll get a fall bloom. Another one I think you should consider is geranium razan. Any of the hardy geraniums you would have to purchase. They are not something I would suggest for a beginner to try to propagate or start from seed, but one plant will get you a lot of flowers and it will bloom for a very long time. Razan is a common one that usually you can find, but there are so many, and we have an entire episode just about hardy geraniums and catmint. So give that a listen. And again, that will probably be a front to maybe slightly mid-border plant for you. A couple surprises I'm going to throw in for you. The first one is Phlox creme brulee, which is a phlox known as Phloxdramundi grandiflora, and you can grow this from seed. It's super easy to sow. This is the time of year to do it. It's going to be about 1.5 feet high, so a mid-border plant, beautiful colors, very prolific, and it should be really easy for you to grow. Again, just a direct sow, follow the directions on the packet as far as how much to cover your seed. And then the other one is a wallflower. It has kind of a similar shape to the phlox, and it's also a really good producer. I'm growing one called Vulcan this year, but there are other colors that you can find. Select Seeds is one of the seed companies that I use a lot and will have many of the options that we've discussed here. There are other great seed companies out there that you can find these at as well. One thing to help keep costs down is to try to find as many of these plants from one seed company at one time so you can keep your shipping costs down. And I think that Select Seeds is a great one, as well as Johnny's, to help you find some of these. There's so many other flowers we could mention, but I feel like that would do a great job of getting your first 4x4 bed started for sun-loving plants. I want to take a second to mention that When you place this bed, do make sure that you have access to water or that it's easy for you to get to with a watering can if that's how you'll be watering. Most of these are going to be pretty tough, but especially when you are sowing from seed, that soil needs to stay consistently moist so that these seeds will germinate. In other words, if you're getting spring rain every other day, then you're probably fine. But if you're not, you're going to need to lightly water the soil. We don't want a big dump of water on top of that because it'll disturb the seeds. Then once they get going, their watering needs are relatively the same. The other thing about these plants that we discussed is that you'll have a pretty good bloom throughout most of the year, and they're all vigorous producers. So just keep in mind your ability to get water to this raised bed. I think people really underestimate what we can grow in the shade, so I want to throw a few things in here just for you to consider. Now, these plants are plants that you would need to purchase because none of them are ones that I would recommend trying to either propagate or potentially grow from seed, especially if you are limited in your skills. It would be very frustrating. The great thing about these is that all of them are perennials, meaning they're going to come back year after year. You wouldn't necessarily have to group them in a 4x4 bed. You could plant these around some trees in a shaded area. You certainly could put them in a raised bed, but these also could be planted directly into the ground. You just want to make sure you're removing any competing grass or weeds around them. Now, the first one is columbine. I love columbine. It's also called Aquilegia, which is the Latin name, but you will be able to easily find columbine. I do encourage you to have some fun and go check out your local garden centers because they tend to have a wider variety of colors and selections, but you also can order these online. The thing about columbine is that the leaf is very beautiful as well as the flower, and I think it would be a stunning pressed flower. It is a shade lover, meaning less than 4 hours of sunlight a day or filtered sunlight. So think somewhere like in a woodland area. Also, if you are planting in the shade, typically you don't want to get right up to the trunk of a tree. Remember that these plants need to be able to essentially compete with the tree roots, and these plants are specifically designed to handle that. The next one is hellebores, and I love hellebores. We have a whole podcast episode on hellebores. Right now, I'm obsessed with the wedding series, but they can be a little harder to find. So just buy a hellebore plant that you love the color of and plant it in the shade. The season has now passed for their blooms, which means that you probably can buy one on sale. And as long as it's in decent condition, it'll come back in January or February next year and really start to shine. These leaves are evergreen, so it adds some interest throughout the year. Then you get the benefit of the flower early in the spring when not much else is blooming, and they make great cut flowers to bring inside as well. Next on the shade list is ferns, and you mentioned that as well, and I think ferns are amazing. What fascinating plants. If I was going to choose a fern for pressing, it would probably be the autumn fern because it changes color throughout the year, and they're really tough. They actually can handle a little bit of sun, but these guys are just such great performers, and they're easy to find at most nurseries. I do also like a cinnamon fern. I think they have kind of an interesting coloration as they grow out. I'm not sure how they would press, but you could definitely check that one out as well. And the next, I want to add in a hydrangea. I can't imagine summer without hydrangeas. And, hydrangeas can handle both sun and shade depending on the variety. Since we're talking about shade, I'm going to recommend the hydrangea that I fell in love with last year called Bloomstruck. It's part of the Endless Summer series and has just this beautiful range of really deep, vibrant purples. Again, there are other options out there for hydrangeas that are shade lovers, but I will tell you, I think this one is gorgeous and definitely worth considering. The last thing in the shade category is going to be a plant called Solomon's Seal. I prefer the variegated variety where you get some different color on the leaf, but what I love about Solomon's Seal is that it's this tiny little almost bell flower hanging off the end of the plant, and it kind of arches over. This is something that's going to start to bloom around this time of year. So with this plant, if you were to plant it now, you really may not reap the benefit until next year. But if you had a combination of hellebore, columbine, ferns, a hydrangea, and some Solomon's Seal in a shady area of your yard, you would have a beautiful flower bed, as well as each of these plants having great flowers for you to press. So it just depends on what your goals are. But if we want to keep it simple, we want to get some stuff going right away, then I would go ahead and start your raised sun-loving bed with some of these seeds that we mentioned that you can start right now. Have fun with it. What a great fun hobby. I look forward to seeing some pictures from you, and I hope that this helped you understand how you could get started right away and get a lot of flowers for not a lot of money in a very short period of time. As always, let's go grow, baby.
Thanks for listening to Fostering Blooms. If this episode inspired you, send it to a friend who's ready to ditch bland grocery store radishes and get spicy in the garden with us. We'd love it if you left us a 5-star review. That helps other people like you find our podcast. And don't forget to tag us on Instagram when your blooms show off. Until next time, let's go grow, baby.